every time there is a new Paul Thomas Anderson film, it's almost, for me, it's like an event. Like,
I love Phantom Thread so much. It's such a good film. It makes me want to cry.
the beauty of Phantom Thread is how these mundane things are elevated to a level of thriller. You want to do this fun thing before we end? How to approach Paul Thomas Anderson filmography?
Now, oh wow! Finally, we've managed to talk about the patterns that you see in all the films, but there's also another layer to it, the less obvious ones.
The less obvious pattern, first thing I would like to start, number one is changing dynamics of female characters throughout his filmography. If you pick any one particular movie and just watch it as a standalone, it's not something that you can realize. But if you watch his entire filmography from the start till Phantom Thread, there's definitely a set pattern in which his women characters grew. In The Hard Eight, Boogie Nights, and Magnolia, yes, there is some sort of a subversion, but also they're very much stereotypical female characters, overdosing on drugs, at the mercy of the men who are around them, who has more power. But post Magnolia, the patterns, that particular aspect started to change. Dominating figures were the female in Barry's life, in Punch Drunk Love, in a very comedic way. The entire film is presented in a comedic way. This cyber sex girl cons him up.
Correct.
So his biggest villain becomes a woman who's stronger than him. In every way possible. So he's helpless over there. The girl is more assertive in the romantic relationship than him. So this aspect of these helpless women, all of a sudden he went left field. And as I said earlier, the absence of female characters, prominent female characters, it itself helps serve the film and the character of Daniel Plainview. As we move into The Master, there are no quote-unquote weak female characters.
Right.
Everyone, especially in The Master, there's an argument to be made, like, who actually is the Master?
Yeah.
Is it really
Lancaster Dodd
Philip
or his
Seymour
wife?
Hoffman? Yeah, or his wife, played fantastically by Amy Adams. From Punch Drunk Love onwards, there are Paul Thomas Anderson changed the way he framed close-ups. That's most prominent in The Master. Very Jonathan Demme close-ups in which the characters look straight into the camera when they're talking to each other. And Amy Adams' character, when she is talking to Freddie Quill, she is addressing Freddie Quill by addressing to the camera. And that particular aspect, that particular leverage is not given to even Lancaster Dodd.
Right.
It's given straight first to
Freddie
Amy
Quill.
Adams. In a way, do you really know who is really has the upper hand in this entire cause? Again, in Inherent Vice, the character played by Reese Witherspoon.
That was so random.
She's playing, I think, advocate, but not run-of-the-mill advocate. The girl who feels like is helpless, that's an aspect that I want to talk about. In Inherent Vice is Shasta.
Shasta, yeah.
Is that the right one? Is she the real one that we see in the film? I am pretty much convinced throughout the film, every time she comes in, that's Doc hallucinating.
Yeah. I felt that way about the narrator. I felt that girl is not real.
She's also not real. Shasta's character, in a sense, like, it's his version of Shasta. So it's not as a whole-rounded character as the other women in his life, like Reese Witherspoon or the other characters he meet.
नहीं, पर शास्ता के बारे में तो बहुत सारे लोग बातें करते हैं. I feel Sortilegi is like Sortilegi, who's in voiceover, who always says the right things, and she always knows the right things. I think that's like a figment of his imagination, because these are the right things that he knows in his brain, but he's just too high all the time to verbalize things.
That's also, in a way, I think it's the most novelistic film in terms of adaptation. True to the medium of books, because while watching the film, I'm like, this could be a good novel. And then all of a sudden you realize, oh shit, it's adapted from a novel.
Yes. One of the patterns that I have seen and I just absolutely love observing in Paul Thomas Anderson films, and I'm waiting for this moment to show up in his films, is the crucial meetings at a cafe or a eatery or a restaurant or over a meal. He has also said this in his interviews that when he's stuck and he wants to write a scene, he just puts two people in a cafe and the scene just kind of appears. It just comes. And this is exactly what happens in Hard Eight. The most crucial scene in the beginning when John and Sydney meet each other is at a restaurant. His short film, Cigarettes and Coffee, which became Hard Eight, is entirely set at a cafe. Then you move on to Boogie Nights. Dirk Diggler is discovered working as a waiter in a restaurant. In Magnolia, again, the most amazing scene of the film, cop played by John C. Reilly, he's talking to Claudia and he confesses so much to her and she confesses so much to him. Again, it happens at a restaurant. William H. Macy character, quiz kid, he falls in love with the bartender. We only ever see him, we see him going to this bar over and over again and he's in love with the bartender. Again, in Punch Drunk Love, Barry Egan, we really truly, through the point of view of as a romantic partner, we see his reality come forward in two places. When once he smashes the window over dinner at his sister's house, and once he smashes the bathroom at a restaurant when he's gone for a date.
At a restaurant.
You see this again in There Will Be Blood when Daniel Plainview is at a restaurant with HW and he spots his competitor sitting at the other table, and he just kind of has a mental breakdown in that moment. He just gets angry in that moment. Crucial scene in the film. The Master, I'll come back to later because it's a different thing here. But if we move on to Inherent Vice, the scene that you see over and over again when you look at promotional materials of Inherent Vice, you look at the trailers, you see Josh Brolin and Joaquin Phoenix sitting at a Japanese restaurant, and Josh Brolin is yelling Motu Panekeku at the Japanese server or the cook, who's responding in English. He wants more pancakes, but the guy's like, all right, dude, relax. And it's so funny. It is so pointless. And it's so stupid. Paul Thomas Anderson's entire journey of Cigarettes and Coffee culminates in Phantom Thread, where the meeting at restaurant, the talking over food, the importance of food in a relationship, the importance of, even in Master, he explores this about alcohol because Freddie Quell makes alcohol for Lancaster Dodd, and that's how they bond, because he makes this weird chemical concoction. And that just kind of culminates in Phantom Thread in such a major way. Mushrooms and other food that he likes to eat in a particular fashion. He doesn't like butter. They meet at a restaurant. The Hungry Boy scene, I urge everyone, if there's one scene that you should revisit to analyze from Phantom Thread, it is the Hungry Boy scene when Alma and Woodcock meet for the first time at a restaurant where she's working as a waiter. What do you think about this pattern that keeps showing up over and over again?
It's food characters eating, drinking together is one of the most fascinating places to set any scene.
And he does it in every
automatically film. Yeah, it's such a joy to watch actors eating and acting. I don't know why, but it's just fun. It just adds an extra layer. The most tension-filled, anxiety-ridden thriller sequence of this decade, the decade of the past, was whether Reynold Woodcock will eat that omelette or not. At the end.
I'm like, the entire he knows uske andar kya pada hua hai. He knows.
I'm like, that's such a beautiful, it's such a mundane thing. The beauty of Phantom Thread is how these mundane things are elevated to a level of thriller. It's a romantic thriller. Whether this man will eat that omelette or not.
That film just becomes something else, man. It becomes something else entirely. It starts somewhere else, it goes somewhere else, and then it just becomes something else. I love Phantom Thread so much. It's such a good film. It makes me want to cry. Every time I feel like I have no motivation and I have no, I don't want to do anything. I watch something by Paul Thomas Anderson, or I watch an interview of Paul Thomas Anderson, and it's like a shot to the arm, because I'm like, this is the kind of greatness that can be achieved in cinema. Are there other non-obvious patterns that you want to talk about?
Earlier films has more high energy because he was young and he wanted to show off and wanted to show that I'm a director. So Boogie Nights and Magnolia has this long trolley shots and
uninterrupted takes
and uninterrupted long takes and everything, which comes from his influences from Robert Altman, Marty Scorsese. So that's evident. what I love about, as I've alluded earlier, was two things. Number one is his pacing of his films.
Yeah.
He always made long films.
Yeah.
Like, except for Punch Drunk Love, every single film is 2.5 hour long. But within those 2.5 hour long running time, he changed the pace of his films drastically. 3 hour long Magnolia has an average shot length of 4 seconds. The Master has an average shot length of 15 point something seconds.
Which is insanely long.
Which is insane. Exactly. If you are just figure out, if you're sitting on an edit table, if anybody has done it or will do in future, when you sit on an edit table and you see a shot going on for 15 seconds, you feel anxious. Like,
yes,
audience will not like it. This people will get bored. I need to put some music underneath it. There are hundreds of things. Studio feels anxious. Hundreds of things happening when you put a 15-second long shot. That's the average shot length. That means Masters has longer
takes. And even there will be blood.
Even there will be. That's the thing. From Punch Drunk Love onwards, which was his shortest film, he changed the pace of his films. But that by no means changed the pace of the drama. There's a beautiful video done by Nerdwriter on the editing of There Will Be Blood.
Yes, I've seen it.
The first act, the middle act, and final act of the film all has an average shot length of something around 12 to 14 seconds.
Right.
So the entire film has an average shot length of 12 seconds, but at no point you feel that the movie has sort of gone a little slow and now it's become mundane. It has this relentless aspect to it. Same with The Master, and same with the Phantom Thread. All these are not only long films, but quote unquote slow films.
Right, for sure.
But slow in their short length, not in terms of the dramatic pace. The longer the takes, the longer the shots in film, the importance of an individual cut becomes greater.
Yeah.
So in Magnolia, because the movie is running so fast, you might not realize certain things, or you might not notice certain edit patterns because information is moving on so fast.
Yeah.
But in The Master, Freddie Quill and Dodd in front of each other and just staring at each other.
Yeah.
You stop seeing their faces.
Yeah.
And you start noticing other things. And that's where these great performances that we talk about, Daniel Day-Lewis or Philip Seymour Hoffman or Joaquin Phoenix, that's where they earn their money. Because Anderson can run a 20-second long take about Daniel Day-Lewis only looking at Eli Sunday, just standing with his hands on his hips. Yeah. Another thing is the close-ups, as I was saying. Before Punch Drunk Love, or till Punch Drunk Love, he used to frame these very traditional close-ups. Like you will see, if it's a wide-angle film, you will see the actor on either one side looking into the other off camera and all. There Will Be Blood onwards, character starts to look into the camera or very like next to the lens. They'll have a close-up which chops their head off and just frames just a little under the chin, which was very Bergman-esque thing to do. Turns out his other influence was Jonathan Demme. And if you've seen Silence of the Lambs or Philadelphia, that's the close-up. Those are the close-ups that he are looking for. And he achieved that in The Master. Amy Adams' character, you see her daughter, Elizabeth, looking straight into the camera when addressing to Freddie Quill. Same thing in Phantom Thread. Leslie Manville looks straight into the lens.
Yeah.
Because Paul Thomas Anderson, first and foremost, is a very visual storyteller.
Yeah.
There is a lot of things that is happening in the frame which is not in dialogue. You can go again and again and you can find new information.
New things.
Then the way a character just moved his or her arm, or the way the camera just caught the flinch in the eye.
Yeah,
so those visual aspects.
The Foley in Phantom Thread is so sharp. It is so sharp, and you notice it maybe like on a second viewing or something how sharp it is, because that's how Reynold Woodcock is experiencing his world. His world. He's so like easily distracted by everything, and he just wants absolute no distraction. The Foley sound is sharp when you're buttering the toast, or when you're picking up a cup and you're putting it down on the table. When Amar's doing that, he's just like, every little sound is just like killing him.
The way he changed the way he would use music in the film. First, he was using music in a very traditional sense, not exactly traditionally, but using pop or rock songs in Magnolia or Boogie Nights. But in Punch Drunk Love, I forgot the name of the music composer that he had, but his love affair with avant-garde music started with Punch Drunk Love. And the way it's composed is so unhinging, it's so anxiety inducing. It complements the characters so well. And after that, he collaborated with Johnny Greenwood, and from There Will Be Blood, it's this syncopated sound became a signature for Paul Thomas Anderson movies. The reason I think there is this mysterious aspect to Anderson's films, especially in the latter films, from There Will Be Blood onwards, is he started to get away with establishing shots. General tendency is you put wide shot, establishing shot of a place, character comes into that place, and then they start and talk. You will see a lot of scenes start with close-ups. They stay on close-up and then they finish it. He's taking away the context in which the scene is taking place. So if you remember in The Master, he's being interviewed by this army chief. Entire scene takes place in close-ups. We don't know what room they are in. You don't know what's the surrounding. In inherent wise, most of the scene ends in close-ups. Yes, it's being played in dialogue, but in visually, you're not seeing the space in which these characters are operating.
Arey, that is such an incoherent film. I just what did I just watch? I finished watching the film and I was like, what did I just watch? But I know that I am going to watch it again. It's not one of those films where you watch once and you're like, "Acha samajh nahi aayi, chhod jao." Nahi, I want to understand it, I want to get into it, and I want to get into the mind of Doc, Larry Sportello a little bit more. Lastly, there are some oddities and absurdities in his films which I have not been able to explain, and maybe you'll be able to help me out a little bit. Why in Magnolia suddenly everybody starts to sing that one song, everyone is connected with that one song and everyone's singing it and it turns into a musical? Why does that happen?
I have no idea. The moment frogs started to rain, I said, I'm done. You're allowed to do anything after that.
But that's biblical, no? That's a reference to
Exodus 8:2.
Exodus 8:2. Then there is the Popeye song, He Needs Me, in Punch Drunk Love. It is so random that you hear that voice singing this really almost kind of jarring but beautiful song.
As I said, I think it's a metaphor for Popeye. So the best thing to do is tell people that's
the most obvious reference.
That's the most obvious reference.
Another thing that both of us have not understood is the importance of the harmonium. We've already discussed
harmonium,
that.
I don't understand.
Yeah, I don't understand that either. And then one moment in Inherent Vice, when Doc looks at the picture of the baby when he goes to the woman's house and she says, "My husband's missing," and he just screams and then he returns to normal. I don't understand that moment. I don't understand what happened there.
I'm like, I think it's just a quirky joke.
But I don't understand the joke. Why does he go? He actually, it's not like he's not taken aback, and that would have been funny if you look at the picture of a baby and you're taken aback, "Oh, this is an ugly baby." That's funny. But he actually physically yells, and then in another moment, so it's just really random. Oh my God. Inherent Vice ko to analyze nahi kare to hi acha hai.
Another thing that is very common, but we did not discuss, is all of a sudden dawned on me, is religion is a running theme in his films. Right from Hard Eight. Either characters are very religious or there are religious iconography, mainly Christian. The aspect of religion is started to take it head on from There Will Be Blood. So it's almost a battle of religion versus capitalism, whereas The Master is the battle of theology. In a fairy tale manner is there in Phantom Thread. The entire film is kind of a twisted fairy tale. In Inherent Vice, they're trying to form some sort of a cult of mad people going away from the traditional thing. So religion has always been a common thing in all his films. Certain films has it toned down, certain films has it turned into 11.
Wow, man, that was a long conversation about Paul Thomas Anderson, and I think Paul Thomas Anderson खुद ही इसको देख के bore हो जाएगा. If he watches it, he'll be like,
I know.
Stop talking about me.
Have.
Yeah, I'm gonna split it into 5 parts and be like, now we are talking about father-son relationship. In this part, we are talking about biblical references. Because like I said, I am obsessed. I have a crush on Paul Thomas Anderson and his brain.
You want to do this fun thing before we end? How to approach Paul Thomas Anderson filmography for somebody who has not yet been into it?
Okay, so there are various ways that you can approach a PTA cinematic universe. The first, most obvious way is watch it chronologically in the timeline that it was made. So you start with his short film, Cigarettes and Coffee, then you go to the Dirk Diggler story, then you go to Hard Eight, Boogie Nights, so on and so forth. Wikipedia will give you a list up until Anima, actually. Anima is the music video that he made for one of the members of Radiohead. It is set in a future post-apocalyptic world, and that's a whole conversation unto itself, unpacking Anima. But film-wise, I think Junoon came before Phantom Thread. Phantom Thread is his latest feature film. And now he's working on a film with Bradley Cooper. But the second way of approaching it is chronologically looking at the films, the way they are set, the time period that they are set in history. Vinit, you want to talk more on that?
The oldest time frame in time is like There Will Be Blood, which starts at the turn of the 19th century. 20th century. Starts in the 1891, I guess.
1898 or something, I think it is.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And then moves into 1900s. So that would be the first film to go for, There Will Be Blood. After that is the Second World War ends, and you are into The Master.
Wow.
Post that, you go into the fashion industry of the 50s in England, which is Phantom Thread.
Yes.
Post that, you move into the 70s. So the hippie culture of the 60s moving into the 70s in Inherent Vice.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. 60s moving into 70s is Inherent Vice. 70s, that's right.
The Inherent Vice.
Yes.
And then you are moving into the 90s, and then you can go
Boogie Nights.
Hard Eight,
Boogie Nights first.
Magnolia. No, sorry. Then you are moving into the 80s.
So that's Boogie Nights.
The Boogie Nights. So the golden age of porn industry is the 80s.
Yes.
After Boogie Nights, you go Hard Eight, Magnolia, and Punch Drunk Love.
Hard Eight is contemporary. Magnolia
Hard Eight is contemporary.
Also
Magnolia is contemporary.
Punch Drunk
Love is also contemporary. So their release dates, release year, make them arrange themselves.
Yeah. Wow. And have we covered all of them?
Narrative fiction, yes.
Narrative fiction.
You can add.
But you look at this stuff. So if you were to approach Paul Thomas Anderson films according to a time in American history, and you want to break down American history basis the lead characters of Paul Thomas Anderson films, this is the list. There Will Be Blood.
Yeah.
With Daniel Plainview. The Master with Lancaster Dodd and Freddie Quell. Phantom Thread with Reynolds Woodcock and Alma and Cyril Woodcock. Inherent Vice with Doc Sportello. Boogie Nights with Dirk Diggler. Hard Eight with Sydney and John. Magnolia with a bunch of people. And Punch Drunk Love with Barry, and I forget the name of the girlfriend.
And there's the list that I have, like in terms of his accessibility, from the most accessible to least accessible Paul Thomas Anderson film.
Great. So that's the fourth way of approaching his filmography.
So it would be third way.
Yeah.
Hard Eight is his most accessible film.
Sure.
Chip in if you have.
बोल सुन रही हूँ मैं, पहले सुन तो लूँ.
After Hard Eight, I think Boogie Nights is his other most accessible film. Post Boogie Nights is Punch Drunk Love. Is the most accessible of his films. After that is Magnolia. Post Magnolia, it will be Phantom Thread. Then There Will Be Blood. Then Inherent Vice. And then The Master. The most to least accessible film.
Paul Thomas Anderson is a fabulous filmmaker, and we can do another one of these long 3-hour-long conversations about his work, because this is somebody's filmography that you're trying to put together, his life's work, decades and decades of work that you're trying to put together in a couple of videos. Vinit, thanks, man. This was great.
Thank you very much, Sucharita, for inviting and having this long discussion.
Yes, because you have given up your YouTube career, and I've just started my YouTube independent YouTuber career. So please do more of these with me, okay?
Anytime.
Okay, bye.